So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
Welcome to the first episode of Connecting the Dots. I'm so excited to be here right now because I am going to be united with my friend Hannah, who actually is something I want to highlight and say first and foremost was a very consistent person in terms of me transitioning to San Diego. And so I just want to highlight, we just had a moment to talk about like what's the whole point of this show in the first place. And we were just talking about like when we think about dots, a lot of times we highlight the dots of our wins and we highlight the dots of our losses, but there's not enough stories and conversations about the dots of the in-betweens and within the transitions. And so we're in the midst of transition personally for myself. Hannah also just transitioned in terms of moving to a completely new state, and and them as a creative and as a photographer and all of the things, like I can only imagine like what needed to be done in that process. So we're going to be talking about like what needs to be done foundationally to prepare ourselves for these transitions, and also recognizing sometimes you can't even prepare for what is to come, but you're going to do it anyways. And so again, these conversations are really about highlighting the messy middle that a lot of people don't talk about. A lot of times we like to glamorize between one dot to the next, but there's something in between that's happening. It could be that half a dot that people forget is a part of the whole process. And so I'm just so excited to bring Hannah onto the show and being the first person to allow me to stumbly run into this process. But again, wanting to highlight, and first and foremost, just saying again to Hannah, thank you. Thank you for being a dot in the San Diego community for me to feel connected to while in the midst of transition. And I want to acknowledge how important it is, and like how important it is to be that for somebody when you're the new kid in town. I think a lot of times, yeah, I'm so serious. I think it was like you and like one other person. And I was like, it's hard to make friends. It's hard to get out and put yourself out there amongst, all these things. But you were such a pivotal pillar in terms of just feeling like, okay, like I know somebody here and they're nice and they're being kind and they're being sharing and like all these things. And just wanting to acknowledge, like, to not be afraid to take on that role for people who are in transitions. San Diego being a very transitional city, Portland being a very transitional city. And so I just want to first and foremost just say thank you for your generosity and your kindness for being such a pivotal dot in my transition to San Diego.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. You didn't say that during the pep talk that you were going to do that.
Well, I wanted to let it be on camera to know, like, truly, like, I wish people would acknowledge, like, it stinks being the new person. And so, like, I even think about, like, when I was a kid and, like, being a new, like, I was, when the new kid came into class, I really tried to always be that person that connected with them, be like, hey, welcome to class, you know what I mean? And whatever we were learning, this is multiplication. Can I show you the rest of the school? And so what does that look like as adults and like in this bigger playground called Earth in the world, and that just meant so much to me and continues to mean so much to me. And I hope that you're finding dots in Portland. So why don't we give folks a background about, obviously, how you got into photography and just your story thus far, because I also know that you were born in the Philippines and like all of these things. So yeah, let's start from there. How were you first incepted into the universe?
Well, when there's egg and we're not going to give a science lesson right now.
No.
So I guess a TLDR, I arrived to the United States from the Philippines around 2004. So 2024 actually marks my 20 years of being an immigrant to the United States. Wow, look at that.
And that's worth a celebration. Are you going to celebrate? That's huge.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll celebrate by going back home to the Philippines. Well,
there you go. You're like, I immigrated over here, but I think I want to go back. Thank you.
I want to go back. Let's go home.
Yeah.
So moving here to the States, we were primarily in the Los Angeles County area. So I started off in San Fernando Valley, made our way through the South Bay, which is like Carson, Long Beach, Torrance for folks that know the area. And around college, I moved over to San Diego, and that's kind of like where I've been ever since. I went to college there, started my full-time work there, started my freelance career there, and it was a really beautiful 12 years. And it was a great space to, well, one, just having your 20s in a place like San Diego and seeing that place transform before your eyes was very interesting. And as much as I love San Diego, I still love San Diego. I consider San Diego as like my home, since that was kind of where so much of my learning experience, professionally, personally, kind of blossomed. And even though I love California, love that place, came into sort of like this crossroads where I didn't really feel like I was growing anymore. So business wasn't growing, felt like I was kind of stuck in certain glass ceilings. And the most late 20s, early 30s decision is, well, I'm just going to uproot myself and go somewhere different. And that is exactly what me and my fiance did. We moved from California. We are now living in Oregon, Portland specifically. We've been here for about 6 months. It's going to be 6 months next week. Time is weird. Did not realize that we were going to be this like fast in sort of how long we've been here. And yeah, I think the geography side is kind of checked off. In terms of professional growth, I had an old life in marketing, content, social media, project management, all that good stuff. And around 2020, yet another crossroads where I was let go from a job. And it was either, do I just chill here, or do I try out this freelance side hustle thing that I've been doing since I graduated college in 2015 actually, and do we make that full time? Let's just try it out. And 4 years later, we are still here. We are still trying it out in the photo space, now entering into the photo video space, and also being a producer to a few fun projects, both in California and hopefully Oregon pretty soon. So yeah, I think those two check off a lot of things. I know personally I'm the youngest of two, Filipino,
Yeah.
full-bodied. I like K-pop, I like dogs, I like food. And coffee and matcha. That's it.
I love that.
There you go. That's
it. That's me. And interview over. Done. Cut. No. We got to bring it back though. Of course we got to bring it back. I'm
Yeah.
curious of I mean, I do want to know more about just like the experience of immigrating over here. How old were you when that happened? Like, what was that experience like? And I only say that because I've somehow been in a recent circle of meeting folks who are trying to find their way over here, and sometimes that has to be through marriage, and sometimes it has to be so I'm just curious, as a young person, like, how old were you? Like, what was that experience like? Because that's an experience I've never had and never will have. I got the privilege of being first gen here, but what was that like?
So I moved here when I was 12. I didn't want to come here. That is the very fun fact that any family member back in the Philippines knows. My older sister, she's 7 years older, and she was ready. She was ready to kind of go for that American dream and go to college here, get work here. I was a 12-year-old that basically in my tiny brain was, oh, you're taking me away from my friends, and you're taking me away from the type of schooling that I've only known for most of my life. Why? So it wasn't clicking. I distinctly remember I was actually bargaining with my parents. I was like, can you just let me stay here for one more year? Like, let me finish elementary school and then I will follow. My parents obviously said no. But I guess that's also a very interesting way to kind of see a mind of, a young immigrant like myself, where I think America was sold a certain way, but I still wasn't buying it. I was like, no, but you're taking me away from my family members that have been around in a household and things like that. I did not want to go. My sister has finally said that I was crying on the plane. I was digging my heels. I don't want to be here. And then I found friends that completely changed everything, where there were people that were able to, kind of get me out of my shell, get me to like hang out with them after school programs, things like that. And like I think the desire to be back in the Philippines just like slowly eroded. And then now we're here. So yeah, it was rough. It was very rough. I do want to say that I had a privilege of having schooling where English was very much like a predominant thing. I was raised in a Catholic school environment. So I definitely got that microaggression of, oh, you're not brown. You actually look Korean or Chinese. Your English is great. But, as a child, I was like, oh, that's cool. But I think now as an adult and you kind of learn about microaggressions and kind of all those things, that's when I realized, like, oh, I don't think that was a cool thing to say to a 12-year-old, that your English is, like, really good.
Right.
And I still get that in some other shapes or forms where people are like, oh, like, you don't have an accent at all. I was like, I don't know. It comes out when I speak Tagalog, though. I tell you. For sure. So,
are you still with those? Are you still friends with those folks back home that you so terribly didn't want to leave?
Yes, I'm still friends with a few of them. We all kind of have different lives. Some of them are already parents. Some of them are esteemed. It's like it's very interesting to just sort of like follow people in sort of like the journeys that they've had. Obviously, because I moved to a whole nother continent, the relationship is very different. It's more of like this very voyeuristic, based on social media, whatever they share on social media, which is completely fine. But I think I'm really happy in just kind of seeing where we're all at right now. I know some of us are all over the world, not just in the States. Some of us are in Europe. So it's really interesting just to kind of see even, how Filipinos just, in general, as a people, we do kind of end up all over the map. Whether it be for work, whether it be for dreams of having a better life and things like that. But majority of my family is still in the Philippines, especially on both of my parents' side. Do have some family members over here, but it's always sort of this thing where, yes, I call San Diego, California home, but sometimes when I say home, I reference it to. So
what part of the Philippines?
Oh, okay. So my parents are from the Ilocos region, which is kind of north, mountainous. Maybe not too mountainous, but we're the north. Oh my gosh, there's a map. So we are over in the Luzon region in Ilocos Norte. So both of my parents were from there.
That's so far north. I want to show people. Look how far north that is. It's up here. It's number 2, y'all. I want to highlight this book when you get a chance too, but continue. So I'm here.
Yeah, so I know I have very fond memories of driving up there. Like, flying was not a thing yet. I was like,
what?
Yeah, we drove there every summer and Christmas.
Wait, so where were you at? Where were you driving to? Where were you starting at, and then where were you going to?
Oh, yeah. So even though my parents are from the Ilocos region, they worked in Manila, which is the capital.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me find that.
Sort
Continue.
of like center-ish. But when we were younger, we would drive during holidays and things like that. And it was a gnarly drive. I remember that. So it was very interesting, like, flying there. I was like, oh, we can fly here now?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Sure.
That's incredible. Okay. That's so funny because I want to first highlight this, y'all. This is a book that I got from a friend for my birthday when I visited them in Montreal. It's called Where to Next. It's actually very Filipino based. I'm gonna have to ask my friend, but there's a lot of artists in here, collaborative stories in here. This is their page that they put in here, so that's why they got some free copies. But it's actually called and themed about the in-betweens. So I think that this is very ironic that we're kind of talking about it. But this is also very cool because I was looking at it and I was like, my family is in the very far south in Zamboanga City. And I was looking.
Wow, you're far.
Yeah, that's I was like, you're all the way up there. That's wild. Yeah, that's crazy. And you were saying that the drive was also crazy. So shout out to the artists who were part of that.
It was very gnarly. I remember that as a child, where we had a van. It was a manual van. Automatic was not a thing in the early 90s. And we were just kind of like, we were a bunch of like city kids hanging around in provincial life. And I think when I was younger, it was something that I definitely took for granted. Now that I'm older and I've had a chance to go back home a couple of times, I have found myself just resisting being in the city and just loving being in the province, having like that slower pace. Most of my family members are still in like that multi-generational type of household, so waking up to children, waking up to roosters, an actual rooster,
Not your phone.
not my phone, an actual crowing rooster, and having it just like a little bit slower. I've been finding that whenever family members like, oh, like, do you want to go to this place, I was like, yeah, it's fine. I was like, but I kind of just want to like hang out in the province and just kind of see like what's out there. So which is, I think, also very different as sort of a diaspora Asian coming back home. I think a lot of folks that are first gen, they don't have that kind of tether of, oh, Philippines is home, but no, it's my parents' home or it's my ancestors' home. For me, like, I was there for 12 years. Like, that's a good chunk of time to have memories, photos, you know, ways of living. And I still, you know, remember going to school and walking to school and doing, like, all these little things. But so because I have that type of tether, it's very easy for me to just want to be home rather than explore. Like, I want to explore. I want to go like to the other islands. You know, I only have stayed in Ilocos or Manila. That was really it. And it wasn't until my last visit last year that I was able to go to other places. And it was simply just because, you know, like when you live at a place, you just kind of stay where you're at. When you're visiting, you get this opportunity of picking and choosing. Oh, like, let's go here. Let's check this out. No, but when you've lived there, especially when you're born there, like, you just know what you know. Yeah. So, I think it's very interesting, like, when folks travel, like, oh, have you been to Boracay? Have you been to Coron? And it's like, the furthest that I've gone is a mountain with a really nice beach. That's about it. But yeah.
I actually...
Philippines chapter.
Tell me, you know, I mean, I actually want to highlight this again. The friend that gave this to me, we chatted for a little bit, and what baffled me from the first time we met, they were telling me, so enlighten me for someone who goes back more often than some of us. I heard that because of global warming, we're like sinking?
Know about that, but I do know we're burning.
Okay, I was all like, something's happening over there. Like, water is rising. Something.
I'm not sure about the sinking, but I do know we're burning. It's very, very hot in, like, Southeast Asia right now. So it's not just the Philippines. It's also, like, Thailand and Vietnam and things like that. It is freaking hot. That is also something that, you know, family members have mentioned. They're like, yeah, it's just unnaturally hot. It's hard to grow things. It's hard to maintain things. It's hard to be outside. Like, you just want to be inside with, like, the air conditioning or the fan. Or, you know, it kind of is a reason why mall culture is still very prevalent in places like the Philippines because, you know, giant malls, air conditioning.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
Yeah. I'm from Arizona. I know. It's all about the malls.
Yeah. So, not sure about it sinking, but I do know it's burning. Okay. Which is not the best thing. Either one is not great. Yeah. But, yeah, I think that part of the world really feels climate change, I think, more than anybody. And it's rough. It is rough out there. The humidity, though it makes my skin beautiful, it is disgusting. um, I will say that. It's like I have nice, glowy, pretty skin, but most of the time it's not glow, it's just the sweat, and
Yeah.
it's the sweat kind of like sticking to you. But then that's what people like, so it's like very weird. It's like, oh, yeah, you want that like glow? Yeah, just go to
Yeah.
Philippines and just like humid.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah. Bringing it back, thinking about transitions, let's talk about that was technically your first transition, right? Like at 12 years old. So if you can go back, because I know there's young people out there who are moving schools for the first time or moving countries for the 1st time. Like who knows, like the deck of cards they've been dealt. If you could go back to younger Hannah and just kind of prime her and be like, hey, this is what's up and what's possible to what's going to happen at 12 years old, what would you tell her?
To be more open. I think for my astrology babes, I'm a Taurus rising, and I lean onto my rising signs a lot. So I am stubborn. I like being home, and I can be very set in my ways once my ways have been set. So I think I definitely lacked curiosity, and I lacked a lot of willingness to try things. I don't know if it was just because we were in America or not, but I know in the Philippines, I was the complete opposite. I tried everything. My parents were very gracious and allowed me to have multiple hobbies until I figured out what I wanted. And then somehow here in the States, maybe it was because of our financial situation or things like that, I kind of regressed. I was like, well, let me just, this is what I know. This is what I'm good at. Let's just like stay here. Let's figure things out. Especially as a young middle schooler and high schooler, like I think it was just, like even that age in middle school and high school, like you either want to try everything and be chaotic or not. And I definitely was a not, where I kind of just lied low, really just followed what my parents wanted from me, kind of just like keeping the peace in some way, kind of just like going along the grain rather than against the grain. So kind of encourage folks to not be on the two opposite spectrums, but kind of explore that middle of like, okay, well, it's kind of not in my comfort zone, but I'm super comfortable in this. I want to like grow more. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. But, for the ones that you aren't super comfortable in, you don't have to go jump into the deep end. But just allow curiosity to really kind of reign, because once you're older, the curiosity goes away and you kind of end up feeling this hit of like nostalgia and like, oh man, I was so curious when I was a kid, or oh hey, like I was really into like this type of style. But I think as adults we chase that curiosity back, like we want that back in our cup. So maybe for young people it's like kind of start early, like you don't have to you have to experiment with everything, but just be curious, be more curious with what's ahead of you. And I know it's rough. Today's climate is not allowing you to be that way. And, pockets of joy can be really hard as a young person. I'm thinking about all of the students that are protesting for Gaza right now and saying that advice of like staying curious, having joy, cultivating joy, because once you reach an adult, you'll lose it, or you'll just completely keep trying to chase it back. It's very hard to tell a young person these days, I feel, something like that, because in their head, they're already like, I don't have anything to give right now. So, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to give advice to young people these days, because of what's going on, because they already have seen that default of like, I have nothing to be curious about. The world is ending. I have nothing to find joy for. People are dying and out of my control. So, yeah, it's rough. But to still preserve that sense of curiosity and joy that you have as a young child and bringing that with you into your youth and adulthood, I feel like is such a key thing to be really flexible as an adult living in the real world. because I've definitely had some times where it's like not flexible
Mm.
and have been I know my line of work on the outside shows otherwise, but yes, behind closed doors, I'm definitely I'm still very scared. I'm still sometimes like not curious and very like, oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah. Why don't you actually? I'm curious. I'm curious. I was gonna be like, sis, speak for yourself because I got questions. I got questions, and I really ran with that as a kid. Right when our teachers said like, "There's no such thing as a silly question," I was like, "All right, I'm gonna take that with me." So I'm curious of how you're cultivating curiosity due to having this Taurus rising. I'm just kidding. Yeah, how are you currently?
Oh no, you can. I don't. I feel like mainstream astrology is like very interesting and just like folks kind of just like take what they like about things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't. Sometimes I'm very. I think. Trying to think of like a very fun way. I think because I'm an introverted, somewhat stubborn homebody, I do force myself to go to situations that is like completely opposite of me as a person. The most common one is going to networking events alone. Like I know a lot of folks are like, bring a buddy, have a buddy. What if you live in a city and you've only been here for 6 months and most of your friends love them to death, have W-2 jobs? You end up going to things by yourself. And in the past, I would kind of use that as a cop out of like, I don't want to go, I'll be by myself. Now that I've lived in a new city, I do force myself to just be like, look, we don't have to stay long. You don't have to talk to everybody. Just talk to whoever you gravitate towards and then call it a day and then recover as long as you need. So that I think is sort of like the clearest example that I have of just pushing my curiosity and pushing myself out of that comfort zone is literally pushing myself to be like, girl, you work a creative service. You need it. So kind of forcing myself to get in those situations.
Yeah.
Which have all paid off quite
Yeah.
nicely. But still, like your current brain is like, I hate this. I just want to like stay home and play on my video games.
Yeah.
So, you have to force yourself mentally to kind of have that curiosity and just being open to, not fall on that idea of I need to give everybody my information. Excuse me. It's more of just whoever you vibe with. There you go. Just
Yeah.
hang out. There you go.
Yeah, and I also want to celebrate you because I know that this is uncomfortable for you, but you're like
I know.
leaning into that curiosity of like, well, let's just try again and being on video. So I want to say thank you for that and also celebrate you for leaning into that too.
Yeah, I feel like that's been my whole motto the last 4 years. It's just, we're just going to try this out and see how it goes. It's like, owning a business. Let's just try it out.
I love that.
Jumping into photos. Let's try it out. Like now entering like that video arena. Like, okay, well, let's just see how it goes. That's I feel like has been my mental and just inward motivation to myself. It's just like, let's just keep trying. And I know this might get a little sad and dark, but I know it is a part of it is because I, during my 20s, got really, really traumatic experiences happening in my life. I lost both of my parents before I turned 30. My mom passed away at 23, and then my father passed away when I was 26. Age is rough, but essentially before I turned 30, I had no parents. And I think it definitely drove me to, let's just try it out. Like, let me just try something once, because it's either I'm really going to like it and I'm going to keep going, or I'm really not going to like it and then I'm just going to pivot and go somewhere else. So I think that whole thing of like trying things at least once really comes with interplay of loss and grief. And we're just going to keep trying things until the expiration date comes. And since the expiration dates, in my experience, have been quite short, you kind of just feel like, okay, well, I turned 32. my mom passed away at 61, you know, it's like, oh, I'm kind of well in the halfway point of like when my mom passed. So let's just kind of keep trying and going, because what else, what do we have to lose at this point? You know, like if the business goes well, then yay, that means I can just keep growing.
Yeah.
If the business goes stagnant, then we can like, okay, well, do we want to keep going, or do we want to finally throw in the towel and say, hey, at least I had a business and I tried it out,
Yeah.
and now I can move on to like another chapter and phase in my life.
Yeah.
At the very least, you know, in my deathbed, I was like, well, I kind of tried everything I wanted to try.
Yeah.
So there you go. Except bungee jumping and skydiving. You will never see me do that.
No curiosity there. No curiosity
Nope.
there. Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Yeah.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. I can only imagine, you know, what that experience is like, but I love that you are, you know, shifting your perspective on that and being like, what do I got to lose? You know what I mean? And unfortunately realizing like you've lost such a big part of your life already, but it's like now it's like you move into things with maybe a sense of fearlessness, or not even fearlessness. I know you enough that you're like, oh, there's fear there, but you go do it anyways. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
really admirable. Thanks for sharing that.
Nice. You know, I'm trying to be more open of that fact. And a lot of folks, it's always a mixed bag. Like some folks get really uncomfortable with death and grieving. And then there are some folks that are very comfortable with death and grieving. So you always will never know, but I think it's just such a ironclad fact of my life. You know, it's like, especially now that when you meet other people, it's like, oh, what do your parents do for a living? And I'm like, okay, how are we going to enter this arena?
Yeah.
So I think now I just take it with as much dark humor as I can. And I've unfortunately or fortunately have found very like-minded folks with the same situations of, you know, losing parents at a very young age, because the hill that I die on is your 20s is still a young age. Your 30s is still a young age. I don't care. Your 40s are still a young age. I don't care. So, yeah, I think it's one of those things that definitely, like, being in a new place, it's like, I'm just going to rip off this Band-Aid so the rest of our friendship can be everything else, the ebbs and flows. So, yeah, I know, it's an awkward question.
Yeah.
I think I've just learned, just like, it's just gonna happen now.
Yeah. Speaking of transitions, I'm actually, let's transition into your next transition. So your first transition, 12 years old. When was your next transition? And what was that like?
Moving from LA to San Diego was another one. You know, I spent middle school and high school in LA, and then moved over to San Diego for the rest of my current life, college and current. So that was transition 2. And then now we're in transition 3 from San Diego to Oregon. So yeah, I think now that I'm like kind of taking a stock of it, I have done a lot of transitions.
Yeah.
Dang, that's a lot for, so it's, all right.
Really, really quick, your
You- and
family, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you end up having different eras, and the eras kind of stick with you.
Yeah.
So even though I was only in Los Angeles from like 12 to 18, 19, like I still have very, very good friends in LA. I still have ties to LA. I still sometimes apparently drive like an LA driver, even though I didn't get my license in LA. I don't know. I don't know how that tracks psychologically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have different eras, and you kind of just like bring them in a little backpack, and then you kind of just
Yeah.
along the rest of your journeys.
I'm curious about were you a photographer? What did you study when you came to San Diego? But I'm also the conversation of pursuing a creative endeavor with your parents. Just, you know, of course, being, you know, Filipino sometimes, or just general Asians, you're like, I don't know about that photography thing or that videography thing. I'm just, what was that conversation like?
Okay, so I went to UCSD as a bio major. I remember that. Then I took a bio class, and I was like, nope. And then I switched over to political science. And I was there for a couple of years, took a practice LSAT, and I was like, nope. So I had a communications minor, and I just upgraded it. I upgraded it from a minor to a major. So I was a double major with a minor in visual arts photography. So the little whispers were already there. Yeah, I think it was one of those things that for a very long time I was sort of like in the marketing space, social media, content, all of that stuff. When approaching my parents about potentially having like a creative career, it was mostly because I had a family member that was already a photographer. So in my head, I was like, oh, it's possible. I could see it. It's right here. Um, the very typical to Asian parents are like, we'll have a backup just in case. You'll never know. But what I will credit my parents is they're like, yeah, you could do what makes you happy. Just make sure you have some security, things like that. And I know my mom didn't get to see me be a photographer. I was still in college. But my dad, he was kind of there when I was in that crossroads of, do I want to pursue this? And I think for him, he was very worried, as any parent would, of in his eyes how reckless I was going. He was like, "Oh, you're going to something that you don't know." But he turned that fear into kind of guidance in a way. Because by the time that I was turning and realizing, I was like, "Oh, I kind of want to try this out." I was already graduated college, I was already working. And the greatest gift that my parents gave me was by the time that I graduated college, my dad said, in my eyes, you're an adult. So I'm going to treat you like an adult. But you are still my daughter. So I will be here as a source of advice, guidance, should you want it. And if you want it, I will be grateful because I'm your dad and I will give you as much wisdom as I can have. So it kind of turned into a very fun partnership. I don't want to say partnership. It's weird to say that about a father. But it was one of those things where once he made that declaration, it was like, oh, okay. He thinks that I can handle this. And all he is here now is just to help. So that was great. I think I definitely was very blessed with amazing and understanding parents. Um, I do know that the tune would be very different if I told them in high school that I don't want to go to college and go and do this whole creative thing, because I think I always wanted to have something creative even as early as high school. I was gifted a DSLR on my 18th birthday. So the interest was already there. So I know that if I was younger, the tune might have been a little bit different. But I think because I transitioned when I was a little bit older and, had some life in me, I had the college degree as like a sort of like insurance policy, all of that stuff. It was a little bit better to kind of let them in on the career choices that I was having, especially with my dad. It was definitely one of those things where he just kind of drove it home. He was like, you are an adult human being now, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to have some wins and losses, but that won't make you any less of a person. That just makes you an adult. Yeah. So I'm going to treat you that way. Your mistakes are yours. Your wins are yours. I'm just here to kind of be your cheerleader.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's, first off, incredible. Incredible, incredible, incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm like, wow, if more parents, you know what I mean? If more parents can take your parents' class, you know what I mean? Like, wow.
Yeah.
Just a world of a difference of what it means to pursue things that have already, the seed was already planted, the fact that you had someone in your family, the fact that you were gifted a DSLR. It's just like, I love that he shifted his role a little bit to be like, hey, like, you're a whole adult and I'm gonna treat you as one, but also I'm still your dad and I'm gonna support you. Wow. I love that. And I think we need to have more conversations on how to be better parents. So and so get that little blueprint. That would be great. I mean, gosh, it's just so important. And so let's talk about like this ultimate transition. I'm coming from my curious kid self, because as I've already shared with you, I'm about to, make this little jump and I'm like, yee, okay. I don't know if I know how to swim, but cause I'm from the desert and, I could doggy paddle for like maybe a minute, but someone better come get me, right? So talk to me between the transition of like you said you were working in marketing, all these things, but then like actually going into freelance. Like, I first want to know more so advice in terms of like what was there foundationally. Number one, I'm hearing support from family, you know. Two was, yeah, you went to school and had this degree. Not saying that that was a, you know, that is the main security part, but it's like, I personally feel like, at least in my experience, schooling created disciplines and habits that said like, hey, I'm going to do homework I don't want to do. So I'm sure that that was supportive in, I got to figure out how to get an EIN even though I don't know what to do, or whatever the case, right? So let's talk about the foundations that were set in place before you made the leap.
Yeah. So when I started working full time as, an employee, I still had photography as a side hustle, side gig. Um, that was, I think, the ultimate insurance policy, was I was making all of the mistakes as a business owner while still having a full-time job to help pay for rent, utilities, and things like that. It was also a way for me to explore what type of photography I really wanted to land in. Um, so I started off with weddings because my cousins, who are wedding photographers, they were in weddings. So, tiny post-grad brain was like, okay, I see that this type of photography gets me money. Let's jump into that.
No pressure. No pressure. Just one of the biggest moments in someone's life. Let's just go big or go home.
Yeah. So definitely did that. And it was still all a side hustle. I still had a full-time job. I still was kind of learning and growing as I go. And, like a few years later, I was like, okay, yeah, weddings is not for me. As a whole, exploring photography styles as a whole talk altogether. So, I was side hustling, taking in small jobs here and there for the better part of like most of my 20s up till like COVID. So it was just one of those things where like just kind of kept going. So, even though I had like a full-time job or a part-time job, there was always some sort of job to kind of be a tether a little bit, especially because I wasn't sure if photography was where I kind of wanted to land, even though I did see what was possible with family members, and I started taking photos around like that age when Instagram was still nice and not what it is right now. Chronological order, I will miss you every day. Every day of my life, I will miss you, chronological order. So I was in like that really interesting part where like we really were just kind of MacGyvering through what it was to be a creative person. And it wasn't until my last job, I was fired from that job. And that's when I was like really thinking, okay, we've been doing this, we could keep going here, but there is this little side hustle that we've been kind of cultivating and kind of playing around with. Maybe we can upgrade it a little bit, see where it goes, So yeah, I mean, if people do the math, I did start my business at 2020. Wild time that was. Here we are 4 years later. Yeah, it was definitely one of those things where a growing theme, I kind of have to keep just coming back to it, is I think I just put myself in situations that, one, I'm uncomfortable in, and then two, really just jumping into an end. It doesn't have to be a deep end, it can be a shallow end, but still jumping. Still making like that tiny leap, and also just doing a bunch of little leaps until you get to like that 12-foot end, and you're like, okay, I've been taking it little by little every 2 feet or so, and here's the 12-footer, and then you just kind of go. For lack of a better term, kind of just go. And my business journey is also just like a hodgepodge of things, because it started in 2020. I was very thankful to have been part of a creative company come through. Shout out Gershon and Danny all day, every day for taking that chance of like, all right, this person, they can help with like marketing and things like that. So even within like my full-time freelance journey, there were little leaps along the way until I made that decision of, okay, we're just gonna do photo video.
Yeah.
As the beginnings of my full-time freelancer life, I was still taking in project management requests. I still do from time to time. Tuck it in social media clients, still do from time to time. And it wasn't until like I think around 2022 when I was like, okay, like I've been doing all the things that I've done for other employers now on like a freelance capacity, but we still haven't really dove into photo fully. So it wasn't until 2 years ago and I was like, okay, we're gonna just do it again. We're just gonna take that leap again. So yeah, 2 years later, we're now entering into a photo video space and producer space. So all of the things that I've learned in my past employment and in the beginnings of my freelance life, I now want to bring that to photographers who just don't want to deal with it. Because there are a lot of photographers and videographers that just want to create, but they don't want to handle like the little things. I think my kind of unique strength is because I started off planning things for other people, creating campaigns for other people. And I was like, okay, well, I can do that for photographers and videographers and media companies. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now.
I love that.
But TLDR, it's just a whole bunch of giant little leaps.
Yeah.
If I put myself in the brain space of everything is just one giant leap, you'll easily get burnt out. 100%. But the one thing is kind of looking at them in little tiny segmented leaps until you reach the big one. You're like, okay, this can be a medium-sized one or a large one. That I think kind of makes it a little bit more digestible.
Yeah, I love that.
Especially now that we're in an age where people just get burnt out so easily. I say this as someone who has gone through multiple stages of burnout. Really honoring how much your capacity is. Because if you can only, I don't know if it's going to be on video, if you can only like do this little leap, that's still a leap. They're the same. It's still, the perspective is still the same. You're still going from one point to another. So to go on the length Olympics, I feel like it doesn't really help anybody, especially as a creative person.
Yeah.
So you take the little things, and you take the little wins. And that's things that I even have to remind myself, especially now that I have left a very comfortable community, San Diego creative community. I was there for 12 years and I've forged and created connections, community that still to this day is like very strong. I have a lot of love and a lot of support for my San Diego creative family. But leaving that, for some people it's like, oh, it's only a small leap. You can go multi-city. Oh no, it's a big leap. It is gigantic. I'm going from Southern California to the Pacific Northwest, where everybody has very different everything. So all the small wins, the small projects, the small connections, like I try and stack them on, because there will be days where you look at your small stack and you're just like, I've done absolutely nothing with my life. But kind of remembering that you've taken these leaps, like those are still big things, because you're essentially moving from one version of yourself to another version of yourself.
Yeah,
it's fine.
I love that.
You're good. Little leaps are great.
I love that. And I love that you put the perspective of this little leap still is this, but if you actually zoom into it, right? Like if this is that you zoom, that you're still making headway. And I love that you pointed out, like so many times we see the big leaps, and that's what we're seeing. And I say that for myself, because I'm like, that's how I've typically maneuvered in the past. If it's not from here to here, then like I'm not, like I start stalling in a sense. I'm like, oh gosh, that's such a big leap. I don't know if I have the quads for that. You know what I mean? Like I don't, but I was like, do I have a hop? do I have a hop? You know what I mean? And so I really appreciate you for acknowledging that, because what I'm hearing so far in your journey thus far is like it is just like these little leaps, you know, these little hops from one thing to the next. And like what I'm observing is that you're not planning like this whole thing, like of how it's going to happen. You're like, I know this much. I know the next step. And at the very least, I'm going to take the next best step, right? And so I love that. I love that so much. And so I really appreciate you for sharing that, because that's, I think for me, where I'm at. I'm just like, oh, the big leap, you know, but you're like, well,
Yeah.
wait a second. You should probably have some of these things lined up, possibly, you know what I mean? So that these leaps don't feel so ginormous. But I do want to bring us and wrap up with this, because I think, again, we talked about from the very beginning, you know, we don't talk about enough about transitions. We were talking earlier about seasons and how being in the Southwest, you kind of really have to squint your eyes a little bit to be like, okay, the seasons are changing. And maybe, you know, in the Pacific Northwest, it's very obvious. Seasons are changing. And as we're both in different seasons right now, sounds like, where are you at? You're in the summer? Yeah. Recognizing it's the springs and the falls is probably what I'm thinking about when it comes to these transitions. So it could be the change, the obvious change of what can be really uncomfortable about it. I just kind of want us to like have like a zoomed in perspective of like what has been the hard stuff that's been coming up for you in the past 6 months about the version of yourself that you're becoming.
Yeah, I have learned that I was running on 100 miles an hour in California. It was, I don't know if it's just because of the constant sunshine where we feel like we can run the clock a little bit longer. But we moved here in November, start of winter, and we wintered hard. Um, it was one of those things where I'm a tropical girl who moved from the Philippines to California. So weather-wise, you know, there really wasn't that much of a difference other than I saw less rain in California. So moving to a place where it does rain all the time. It is currently raining outside right now. I don't still look at. Oh no! Oh no, there's sun right there. You can't really see it, but there's a little patch of sunlight right there. But I think for me, like you mentioned earlier, springs and falls. For me, it's definitely the winters. And that was when I realized that I was running a clock that was probably tethering to unsustainable when we moved here. And the thing was, with winter, it is an abrupt stop. And the one thing that I've learned here in the Pacific Northwest is business is dictated by seasons. So during the winter, no one wants to work. Everyone is a hermit. They want to just have indoor activities. They want to do indoor activities. Maybe they'll go out to the snow if they like being outdoorsy. But for the most part, people were really, like that term, wintering. They were hibernating. They were really kind of going more inward of like, oh, okay, we're in that part of the year where they see the year wrapping up before their eyes. So let's just do the same. And that was definitely the biggest change. Also, I had to buy these. These are little spikes that you put under your shoes because it doesn't really snow per se in the Pacific Northwest. It's just ice. We just get ice over here. So these are essential to put under your little shoesies so you could walk outside and, you know, have some interaction with people. These people did not come on time. So we were out for 5 to 7 days in fear of our lives. Not really. No, we ended up just doing puzzles and having soup every day.
Oh, that's so
really
funny.
So I think that's when I realized, like, yeah, like California in general just functions in a very different way. And I think as a business, it was definitely just like your calendar is just go, 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 even during the holidays. So I think what has been really interesting is having that 3 months of just stop what you're doing, like from November till January. some parts of February. Um, it was just, oh, okay, well, what do I do now? What am I gonna do? Like I can't work or I don't feel like working because the rest of the city just doesn't want to do the same thing. Well, what are we gonna do? And I think on a business standpoint, it made me shift things much quicker. So before I was very much just on location, lifestyle, things like that. Nowadays, I do more products, much more indoor activity, kind of nice. My introvert self is very happy about that. It's like, oh, hooray. Um, so it does kind of change the perspective of working in terms of, oh, like as humans, we do have a very natural stop time, which is around the last 3 months, 2 to 3 months of the year, and maybe like the first 2 months of the year. So that was definitely a transition because back in California, my busiest years were holidays and things like that. So now it's like, okay, well, I guess from October until February, I'm just gonna have to pitch for more product-based stuff so I can just be at home and I can just photograph these at home. So when we do get the spring and summer months, then it'll be mostly on location, we'll be out and about. So having to change that so quickly was a little bit of like a whiplash, business wise, because you come into a new city and you're like, okay, here's the game plan, here's what we're gonna do. You land in the city, you're like, okay, some of these things are not gonna work. Let's adjust and see where it goes. So that was kind of how the last 6 months have been.
Professionally,
Yeah, it was
what about personally?
Professionally. And personally, I got engaged.
Hey, there you go. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So personally, me and my longtime partner, we got engaged. So navigating what it is to live with another person away from a multi-generational household has been like a ride. And you're like, oh, that's how your habits are. Well, these are my habits. Well, let's put them together and create our own habits for our own home. So that has been really nice. Friends-wise, we were both really blessed that we already had friends here that live here. So the transition in terms of friends was we just kind of got adopted into like this cute little friend family. So we're just kind of, we hang out. So that for me is sort of like the biggest positive is we did have friends right away. And we weren't the type where like, okay, well, I have to go to like this meetup event or things like that. It was sort of just, we were introduced. So I feel like we were really privileged in that way that we have friends that we were able to get to know pretty quickly. Made the 6 months go by pretty fast, actually. I think that's why I was surprised. I was like, oh shoot, it's May.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was weird. So yeah, I think our transition, it does have its like typical ups and downs. Especially as a business owner, my workflow really slowed down, and a lot of it was me having to say no to certain things I would have previously have said yes to. Because I want to say no because I want to leave room for a client type of work that I think will really solidify me and let me have, that's being known for here in Oregon.
Yeah.
So yeah, transitions are weird. Transitions are bizarre. From having to wear spikes and have puffy coats to, really changing how I operate my business now.
Yeah.
And all doing that within 6 months. I think now in reflection, I was like, wow, that was a very quick turnaround for myself.
Yeah.
But I think part of it is one of the main reasons why I wanted to leave California was to have a giant transition and a giant change. So I think in a weird way, I was kind of subconsciously preparing myself. And then now we're just kind of like seeing the fruits of that kind of come into fruition.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. So rapid fire to give
Yes.
folks something tangible whether young folks transitioning, people transitioning from, a job to freelance and running their own businesses. What's like the one thing foundationally that you feel like that is a takeaway for them when they're preparing for a transition?
Okay, I have 5.
5?
I'll make it fast.
Okay, go.
I'll make it fast. EINs are free. Do not buy them from anything. Don't do any of those legal Zoom stuff. You can get them at the IRS for FREEE free.
Love that. I love that.
That's like my number one desire. I was like, please do not pay $300 for a bunch of numbers. No, you can go to the IRS. The IRS actually has, I know it's not user friendly, but it's there. It's free. Get it. Have it. Start off with a DBA and really explore your options.
What's a DBA?
Whether go. DBA is doing business as. You can get that in everywhere. Your county. Things like that. Having a DBA or doing business as is just like a great little mini step while you figure out if you want to be an LLC or an S Corp, B Corp, what have you. Because those things are different. I know I said a whole bunch of acronyms that I actually don't even know what they mean. They're just business acronyms. But, do your research. Don't jump into what the bandwagon is telling you of like, get an LLC, get an S Corp. Really kind of take that time, and one insurance is having an EIN and having a DBA. Talk to your elders. If there are people that are more seasoned in the game.
You are one of them. Thank you.
Stop! Weird. I am still 22.
Sorry, you're grown now. You're dropping 5 nuggets for us right now, so I'm just saying. I asked for 1, you gave us 5, so you're on elder status right now.
I over prepare.
I love it.
Yeah, seasoned people, especially the ones that you have a good feeling and good vibe, and you know that they will give you advice. Talk to them because they've been around for a while. They've made the mistakes. I know the landscapes are different, but I think the gems and the lessons are the same.
Is there a current elder that you're looking for by chance? I just curious. Is there? Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot. I think I don't really know names as much because a lot of them I just saw at networking events, and they're like, "Oh no,
well, not
a baby."
Yeah, maybe not like the person, but maybe identifying like if so willing, if this mentor would come around, I would be really appreciative during this transition in my life. Who are you looking for?
Oh, I mean, they've already passed, so I feel like it really sucks. But Andre Leon Talley, famous Vogue contributor, editor, everything, style maker. I felt like he would have some nuggets. Oddly enough, and this is probably just because I just saw a bunch of TikToks about her, I would like to talk to Anne Hathaway. Because she has gone through the ups and downs of being a celebrity, and she's getting through her whole little, like, resurgence right now. And I was like, how do you feel? You okay? You want to give something to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those would be really fun ones.
And anyone like right now that I guess what I'm looking at is like maybe someone's watching this. You're like, I would love to actually mentor Hannah because this is what she's looking for, and I would love to give back in that way. So I'm kind of just giving like, hey, put a flag in the air. Who are you looking for?
Any female identifying photographer, producer, videographer that would like to talk to little old me and let me know that I could still do this in my 40s and my 50s.
Okay. All right.
Hi.
Okay, I love it. But for those who are coming up behind you, you still have tip number 4 and tip number 5 for them.
Okay, number 4, on the vein of advice, take what you need. Because, yes, elders can talk your ear off, give you all advice in the world, but only you know how you want your business to go. Only you know how you want your creativity to flow.
That's a good one.
Only you know how you want the rest of your life to go.
Wow.
So take what you need and run with it.
I love that.
And number 5, drink water.
Cheers. Cheers. Let's just do that right now, y'all.
Please hydrate. It's great for your skin. It's great for your body. I only say that because I spent most of my 20s highly, highly caffeinated, and I am now starting to love water again. So yeah, Yeah, that's my fine rapid. I don't know if they're too rapid or too slow.
I
But
love
yeah.
that. I love that. All right, and the last question on this part, and then of course where they can find you. Last question is, what have you learned most about yourself during these three major transitions in the very young life you've been living?
I am very capable
Mm.
to just shut my little nagging, unsure self up sometimes. And we're like, we're just gonna try this. We're gonna try this. Because what else is it gonna do? It's gonna fail? Okay, cool. You know, I think that's definitely upon like major reflection. It's like I've gone through multiple transitions. I've gone through a lot of lows, but the capability to still just try things, see where it goes, even if they're unconventional, even if they're not advisable, even if it's not garnering the income the fastest. What else are we supposed to do in our lives? Are we just gonna just make millions and millions of dollars each time? Or life is just a book of mistakes and wins and milestones that you can look back on. So I'll take that option. Yeah,
I love it.
that's me. No, I lost you. I can't hear you now.
Got you. So thank you for sharing that. I love that.
Yeah.
So speaking of you, where can they find you? What kind of work are you looking for? What kind of work do you still enjoy doing, even though you're transitioning into looking for new opportunities? And yeah, how can they get in touch?
Sure. Website is hannahbernabe.com. Just my name, HANNAHBERNABE.com. Instagram is hbphotos.co. I don't know how to spell that. I've lost my caffeine drive. I'm sorry, but you'll find me there. Right now, I'm looking for lifestyle and product photography in the food, beverage, wellness, active, and beauty space. Hello, makeup. Here we are. Uh, that is a new territory for me, but definitely something that I'm willing and ready to explore. And also for my photographers, media companies, if y'all need a producer, I'm your girl. I actually love spreadsheets and Google Docs and calendars and things.
Wow.
So
I love that.
here, mood boards. Let's go.
I love that.
Yeah, so those are sort of like the buckets that I'd love to have some work in, either in here, Portland, or back in California. So yeah.
I love that. Out of curiosity, are you currently working on a project right now that you're excited about that we can anticipate, or?
It just ended. I had the amazing opportunity of photographing 16 Filipino restaurants, food carts, and organizations
Wow.
here in Oregon. It's a very interesting time, coming from California, Filipinos are everywhere.
Yeah.
But here in the Pacific Northwest, we're a small but mighty team.
Wow.
And there were 16 restaurants that I had the opportunity to photograph for Filipino Food Month. It was such a great way to get to know the Filipino community, the transplant community here in Oregon, and the folks that have been here where they don't see themselves as transplants, like they've been here. So that was really exciting. It was 3 weeks of my life last month of just having Filipino food, photographing Filipino food, and having a look at a different angle of the diaspora that I'm not necessarily, privy to, which is the Pacific Northwest Filipinos. So that is something that I'm super excited to share more of. I did little nuggets on my Instagram. Some photos are on my website. Gonna have like a little blog post about it just to kind of highlight each one. But it was a really great way to be introduced and to join the Filipino community here, which is I know it's very important to me to provide services to the community. So that's been fun. That made me really excited. But currently I'm on recovery mode since that was such a huge project. I've kind of just been like, let's relax.
I love that.
And kind of, um, but gearing up for summer and what summer is going to bring. I guess I can say it here, I will be back in California in August. So very excited to have some projects both in LA, San Diego, kind of like say hi and reconnect, get some client work over there for the month. So yeah, lots of just things that are happening. Yeah, really excited to share about the Siege 4 and kind of what I've learned from it and highlighting kind of like the different folk out here.
I love that. I love that. Hannah, thank you so much for being on the first episode of Connecting the Dots. Like I said, I couldn't have asked for anyone better. Again, being such a pivotal dot in my life in San Diego, and I'm so glad that you found yours in Portland. I'm just so happy for you and this huge transition for you. Please think of me in the future when you go through another transition. Maybe that's going to be in 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, and we can capture it. And that's what I love about it, right? Where you're like, it's literally just like one mini leap at a time, as opposed to it being this big thing. So I just really appreciate you for sharing your wisdom and your experience for those who are coming up behind you, aka me. So I'm going to share at the end of this episode, after saying bye to you, just the nuggets that I had that I'm going to be taking with me as I trek onto this next little leap in my life too. So any last words for folks before you head on out? Hire me. Hire Hannah. Hire her.
I think words are done now. But yeah,
You're like, I'm done
I
being
would love
uncomfortable. Bye.
good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would just love to work with everybody. Everybody in the people of color space, LGBT space, women-led space,
Yes.
or, just folks that really just want to create fun things. Yeah, I'm here. Let's go. Let's create. Make magic.
Awesome.
All that fun stuff.
Yes. Love that. All right, y'all. Thank you so much again, Hannah. And yeah, hire her. All right, we'll see you later. I'm going to tell them all the nuggets I did. So be well. And I will
Yay.
talk to you very, very soon. Bye. Hold on.
This is. I think it's still recording.
I see if you can see if you go ahead and press leave. And I'm going to circle back around.
Mouse, are you okay? Let me just go.
All right, y'all. Again, I want to say thank you to Hannah first and foremost for being my first episode and allowing me to just, make all these little interesting steps in between. But if you all got anything from the episode, I hope that you did. But I'm going to share a couple of things that really stood out to me.
Oh shoot, I'm back. You might have to redo that. I was like, oh, do I join the studio now?
No.
Like rejoined me for some reason.
Okay, so yeah, see if you can leave, and then I'll just call you afterwards after the
Okay.
show. Bye.
Oh my god. Bye.
Oh my goodness. All right, let's try this again. So, yeah, I got a whole bunch of good nuggets from Hannah and the wisdom that she shared with us. First and foremost, again, we talked about in the very beginning about those seasons. We're talking about these transitional seasons, right? And how we don't talk about them often. And what I really loved about her story thus far was that, like, being in a completely different city that has obvious physical seasons reminded her of her humanness, of like, oh, like, it's time to rest now. And I really love that she highlighted that, because for someone who's been born and raised in the Southwest, being in Arizona and now being in San Diego, what seasons, right? So that's why I have to have a more keenness of like feeling those transitions and allowing for my humanness to transition with it. And that's why I love towards the end, she's all like, I'm gonna go rest now. I was like, yes, go rest. I love that. And that's, of course, after doing some really awesome work. The second thing that I got from Hannah was it's the step by step, right? Like, I know for me, like, I tend to over plan and I start thinking like, what is it going to take for me to do this big leap? But like, it just seemed like she rolled into all of this. I'm not going to say seamlessly, but like, she's like, I'm just going to try it. I'm going to try it. And so like, that's the last thing I got from her, was like just this why not? Let's just try it. Let's just try it. What's the worst that can happen? And, you know, of course, with the cards that she's been dealt in terms of losing her parents before 30, I can only imagine like how that plays a part in her reality and how she makes these decisions where she's like, man, like what's truly the worst that can happen? I've gone through a really hard part of this human life already, recognizing that like, yeah, folks, like we're going to lose people in our lives. And, you know, that might be people who helped raise us, and became so much of who we are. And so it's like, wow, like I know for me that like if and when that happens, like, you know, like I'm gonna have to go through that reality, and like God willing, whenever that happens, it's gonna happen. But like, gosh, to do it at such, you know, a young age, before 30, and just such pivotal times in our lives, I can only imagine. And so my heart goes out to Hannah, and for everyone who has lost parents or guides and mentors and elders and people that have been a part of their journey thus far. And so I think for me, like when it comes to this show, that's why it's so what's revealing of itself is how important it is to have elders in our lives that care about us. And so in hindsight, I feel like that's what's happening for me. You know what I mean? I think just know that the folks that I bring on, y'all, I'm not just bringing anybody on, right? Like I'm not just like, oh, like let's just get someone with the most followers or the most whatever the case. Like I'm bringing on good people that I would want you to potentially be mentored by, whether it's gonna be virtually or in person. I'm bringing on, you know, people that can be potential elders that you can look to and can see as role models and to aspire to be. And of course, wanting to create those opportunities for those intergenerational connections. And also just like creating a community where it's like, if you're currently in a space where the cards that you've been dealt, that you don't have people who are as supportive as Hannah's parents, then you can look to the group that I'm carefully curating for all of you. I want you to know that I think about you all the time, and I have yet to even meet you. And, you know, we asked this question, you know, with Hannah when she was 12 years old, and the things that she was experiencing. And I think, you know, being reflective in this moment and transparent with y'all, I'm just creating what I wish I had growing up, you know. And it's because I don't want a young person like myself to go through life alone the way that I've gone through life alone. I felt like I've gone through life alone. When it comes to big decisions and big transitions that we go through in life, and really not feeling like I was supported or had elders to ask for guidance and mentorship from and learn from their experiences. And so this project and this first episode is so dear to me, y'all. And you know, it's revealing itself of how important it is, and how much not only is it, I feel like, is needed in the world, but was needed just for my younger self. And so I hope that you enjoyed this first episode with Hannah. Look forward to what's to come with Connecting the Dots, and just know that you're not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone. And that you, as a dot and as a star in this great big universe, you're a part of it. We're a part of all of it. And I think more than anything, how much we need each other and how connected we are in all of this. And so whether we're connecting dots in this physical plane, in the unseen plane, and trying to navigate through this life, just know that you're so important. You're so worthy. You're enough. You're needed. And just like what Hannah said, you are more than capable. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching episode 1 of Connecting the Dots with Hannah. My name is K.Short, and stay tuned for the second episode and the second elder, the second person that is going to be a part of this community that wants to guide, support, mentor the next generation of leaders to come. All right, bye, y'all.
You have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.